Well, good morning, good afternoon to you all. How are you doing today? My name is Trywin. I am one of the product managers here at Zyxel. Welcome to our sales and solution introduction webinar to Zyxel. If you are a new partner with us or maybe an existing partner just wanted to find out more about our product line, this is the place to be. We're going to be moving through and kind of understanding, trying to introduce you to who Zyxel is, the products that we offer, the solutions that we provide for you, especially for all of your networking needs. And we're here to be your networking ally. So we look forward to working with you. This webinar will be recorded, and you can also view it online at any time after it's been posted. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation if there's time. I got a lot of slides to go through. Just as again, introduction to myself. My name again is Trywin. If you have any questions to me directly, my email is tri, at zyxel.com. You can send me any of those questions if you have any of those. I've been with Zyxel for about 15 years now. And so I've been working in the product management group here and market development. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on in. We got a lot of slides to cover. We've been, as Zyxel, a company for over 30 years. We've been established since 1989. We're celebrating our 30th year, our 30 years this year. We have over 1,500 employees, and we serve over 150 markets worldwide. We power over 700,000 businesses worldwide with our solutions. And with all other kind of devices as well, we power and make connections of up to 100 million devices, especially through the telco. We have products that fit in the telco service provider, the business connectivity, which is where I belong, and in the home as well. Our R&D capabilities are really where we shine. We have over a third of our workforce, so about 500 employees of the 1,500 are software and hardware engineers. And we also have tech support globally as well, including tech support, US-based tech support here in Anaheim, California, where we reside in the US headquarters. Basically providing you support, providing you firmware, modifications, upgrades, feature functions, things like that, being able to work with our R&D, giving you the best solutions possible. And we provide a comprehensive commercial portfolio. We offer a range of products and solutions that work end-to-end, giving really a one network experience. We achieve this by putting all sorts of innovations, combine them with technologies, integrations to achieve really a secure, ease of use experience for both the IT users who are managing the products, as well as the end users themselves. So we have products that are in the security sector, which provide all sorts of UTM, threat management, malware protection, firewall functionalities. We have LAN switches, web managed, fully managed switches to provide the backbone network. We have wireless access points and wireless networks to giving you that roaming capabilities. Everything is running on wireless now. We have gateways that provide captive portal solutions for hotspot, guest network access, even gateways just for the home or small office, and then tying it all together with network management, being able to work with the software and the hardware in the cloud to help you manage it from a single point of access. So first I wanted to talk about is the most kind of our best product line. I mean, most importantly is security. Security is in terms of network security. So according to Symantec, 76% of scan websites were found with malware or vulnerabilities. So there's a lot of things and threats that are out there, and Google's reported increase of sites being hacked, as well as 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses. So not only are big businesses being targeted, but a lot of small businesses are being kind of indirectly targeted as well. Every 40 seconds, the company gets hit with ransomware. So that's like 4,000 ransomware attacks every day that happen. And so that's a huge topic of discussion nowadays, dealing with how do we deal with malware and ransomware. And then, of course, we have data breaches as well. So a lot of people don't take that into account, thinking, hey, it's not going to attack me. It's not going to affect me at all. But of course, there's always an increase of attacks, both ransomware, data breaches. And so how do you combat that? The first line of defense, which we think is a very powerful and very optimal solution, is using one of Zyxel's cloud, USG's VPN gateways, or ATP product lines. And again, we have a wide portfolio of products that provide a full range, depending on your application and what your needs are, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to protect, whether you need full protection or just even just the VPN encryption protection. So on the lower end or on one end of the spectrum, you have your VPN series that provide you the encryption, the site-to-site, giving you SD-WAN capabilities. But really, that's the next generation VPN firewall there. We have cloud solutions of UTM, being able to manage UTM, basic, threat management, but all managed into the cloud. We have the on-prem kind of protection UTM, like our USG series, and of course our ATP series is our newest platform that provides not only the UTM functionality, but it also sandboxing as well to provide protection against zero-day attacks. So some of the features of our USG, just in general, just kind of give you an overview of things. Things like content filtering 2.0 allows for you to block web pages, so web page contents, not only the HTTP website, but also HTTPS, so the encrypted versions as well. So if you have a customer who says, hey, I need to block social media sites, I need to block Facebook, I need to block YouTube, that's the function you want to use. Of course, we have a full array. These are just a few of the features that we have available for our product lines. But we even in the small business sector, we have allow for you to do multi-WAN load balancing. That's key because you have customers that say, "Hey, I want to increase my internet speeds without without having to get rid of maybe an existing connection." So you're able to add a secondary that gives you not only increased speeds, but then be able to load balance and do failover. Application intelligence, being able to identify key kind of applications like, again, YouTube or Netflix or Spotify, and be able to control all of those things. Integrated wireless LAN controller, meaning that the hardware itself can then be used to manage access points, business class access points that Zyxel provides in a single pane of hardware. And again, I'm moving really quickly, just try to give you a high level overview. If you'd like to talk any more specifics about some functions, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to your sales rep, and we could get in, dive a little bit deeper. But again, I just want to kind of give you a quick overview of kind of the things that I think is important for you to know about our product lines. Of course, in our higher end models, we have things like high availability, if you're doing that or have needs for that, especially with the HA Pro functionality, being able to do 2 devices that have all the sessions and be able to immediately do seamless failover to that. And of course, hotspot management, being able to offer a guest network access that has its own kind of profile, its own access, its own firewall rules, and be able to control that just like you would at maybe a guest network hotel or coffee shop, that kind of thing that's provided with that. So our portfolio is pretty wide range. The different kind of segments of the product is just basically your throughput, what kind of throughputs you need, especially if you're doing full UTM. You want to take a look at the UTM throughput because that's kind of the baseline that you would need. And the theoretical numbers that you find on the data sheets, typically it's about 50 to 60% of that number is what you'll experience in real life. So for example, a USG 40 series has a UTM throughput about 50 megabits per second. So that's probably optimal for any connection. That's probably a 25 meg to 30 meg connection for that small office. And of course, you then can range up, based on the needs of that customer. So these provide for you the full kind of UTM suite as a standalone on-prem kind of device. So we have a full series and full range of those. And of course, we believe that Zyxel has kind of the best total cost of ownership, especially for the performance that's available. When you compare against, Sonic Wall, WatchGuard, Fortinet, we could be up to 49% more cost effective because there are a few things that we offer on top of, the licenses. So we offer free firmware upgrades and updates for the life of the product. It's lifetime hardware warranty. There's free support with no support contracts. So all of the things that you may have to pay extra in order to get those kinds of support, it's all included within ours. So especially when you're talking about 1, 2, 3 years of ownership of the product, which small businesses will typically use it for at least 5 years or more. There's a lot of cost savings when you don't have to have those support contracts, especially, in order just to even get a phone call just for tech support. You can call up our tech support and do that. You also have opportunities for recurring profits, especially using our licenses. All of our security product offerings, all of the functionalities, the UTM features, etc., they all provide yearly subscriptions. So those are yearly revenue that you could be capturing with your customers on the renewal on a yearly basis. If you haven't already, if you haven't made an account at myzyxel.com, please do that. That's pretty much the central portal that helps you to do all of your license management. If you are a registered partner or an approved partner, there's a link at the very top that says, request reseller view. You want to click that. You want to reach out to, want to fill out that information. You want to reach out to your sales rep to say, hey, I just applied for the reseller view, so that we can go through the approval process and give you the view that lets you have multiple, customers. You could be listed so that your customer devices can be put into your portal view, so that you can manage all of your customer licenses through the MyZyxel site. And of course, we depend upon partners like Bitdefender, Siren, and Trend Micro to provide for us all of their signatures, which when we could throw in our engines in order to do that. We know that they do what they do best, right? And so we don't like to do that in ourselves. So we just use their signatures within our engine to give you kind of the best support of product of those security services. So antivirus, anti-spam, content filtering, intrusion detection, and application control and intelligence. Those are all in there. One quick question from RW Sanders. What sort of feedback does user get for block sites or data coming via web or email client? So you can actually choose to log all of that, especially via web. But email clients, if you have the anti-spam function turned on, then that's what will do a little bit more of the analysis. You could choose to log that. You can get reporting data, especially if you're using Secure Reporter. And I have a couple slides to talk about Secure Reporter. So if you want to learn more about that, that's something you want to look up. It's called Secure Reporter. That helps to organize all of that log data into a view and to give you that feedback of what's going on, what's getting blocked, what websites they're going to, which clients are going to those websites, etc. So I wanted to talk a little about what VPC is. So Amazon VPC is basically a sub-cloud that you can purchase right through Amazon and provide yourself a virtual kind of data center. And connectivity from your office to that AWS side requires for you to have a VPC approved piece of hardware in order to make that VPN connection. And so it goes through a lot of testing and scrutiny that Amazon puts any kind of hardware product through in order to get approved for that. So you may have web applications, you have file servers, storage, database, etc. on the Amazon side, and so you need to make that connection. And so Zyxel products actually are approved for that. So we're actually listed in AWS as one of the approved customer gateways that they've tested and approved. So as long as you're on the Zyxel 4.20 firmware or higher, you can make those VPN connections directly to the Amazon cloud. So we're actually listed with a lot of the other major players in the market. So we're pretty proud of that, that our products are able to do and maintain those kind of scrutiny or high-level connectivity to the VPN of Amazon. And so our portfolio on the VPN side, we have products on the low end, like the VPN 2S, which is like a sub $100 type product for your small office or home office. That gives you that VPN connectivity, gives you the firewall protection, but doesn't give you the full UTM functionality. So a lot of the VPN series are non-UTM. Their focus is to do firewall rules and VPN connectivity. So these are the ones where you would use to do that. VPN 50, VPN 100, 300, and also the 2200. Again, those are all scaled based on the number of VPN tunnels you need, or maybe the throughput of the VPN tunnels. And of course, a lot of them also have the dual WAN load balancing kind of functionalities. But the kind of the best in-class product that we have, that we just released a few months ago, is our ATB product. It stands for Advanced Threat Protection. And so it goes beyond, your conventional UTM. ATP not only blocks your typical signature-based threats that you may be used to, like antivirus, intrusion detection, things like that, but it also is able to block unknown threats, or at least have the ability to do that using sandboxing. So advanced ATP goes beyond that typical day, your typical signatures, so that it can provide that 0-day protection. So conventional UTM, it depends on signatures, right? And so you have to have your anti-spam, IDP, AV, your application control content, and you can then classify them as, okay, they're really good, they're actually good, or they're bad, right? So you kind of have those kind of two spectrums, and that's easy because then you can say, okay, it's good, let it through, it's bad, block it. But of course, there's always the gray area. And so in the gray area, typical UTM signatures don't know what to do with it. So typically they are either let through, or they provide kind of a real challenge on what to do about it. So ATPs actually use sandboxing and artificial intelligence to manage that part of it. So 0-day or unknown security threats, which actually now make up a lot of the threats that are out there, those fall under this. So the ATP series product and the sandboxing can now at least take some action on that kind of that part. So we're able to conquer what we call unknown security threats because we actually send whatever that file is or whatever that behavior is off to the cloud and let the cloud actually analyze what's going on. So it blocks those kind of suspicious traffic. It's able to do this at a very high speed. And then all the unknown files or unknown kind of hashes of files are isolated and then sent to the sandboxing for analysis. And that can take, any kind of period of time. Could be seconds, could be a few minutes. But we'll show you why that is very effective in general. It uses the cloud, so it's using the cloud intelligence to identify those threats. It's constantly updating the database that's in there. And not only is it good because it's updating the database in the central cloud, that information is then shared across all the platforms of ATPs that are being used worldwide. So everybody gets benefit of those heuristics that are or those identifications that are happening in the cloud. So the ATP also then uses some sort of AI to grow basically smarter over time. So a little example about that. How do we do that? We do it through what we call cloud intelligence. So you have unknown threats that are coming through. They may be, patterns or packets and things like that. And so those unknown threats are being sent to the cloud to be emulated. So it kind of looks at that. It looks at, tries to identify it and say, let's say, for example, it does identify that as a malicious attack. Then it sends it off to the defense intelligence to try to capture what it is. And of course, it updates the signature. And then that is also then shared across the network and through the ecosystem. So that information is passed on to the rest of the world, basically. So the ecosystem is kind of where the power of the ATP and the sandboxing comes into play. The ATP gateways have kind of a local database that has a bunch of the hashes already, but it can then query the cloud whenever it needs to ensure really an up-to-date, constantly updating, proactive kind of security functionality through the network environment. So again, not only your network, but anyone's network that's using the ATP. And we're actually leveraging a company that is a market leader called Lastline, and they are kind of focused on making products, or at least their intelligence of their sandbox solution for enterprise, and they are actually rated very high. They're actually one of the leading market leaders there atop there with Trend Micro, Checkpoint, Fortinet, etc., on how their threats are being managed and their detection systems in their sandbox solution. So really high-end kind of cloud solution that we're utilizing in our product line. And our ATP portfolio, again, just like any of our other USG security line, it's a wide range of products. All of the products, the ATP 200, 500, and 800 are available. They include, out of the box, 1 year of the gold security pack. Basically, it's fully loaded. Again, you can see that even on the low end of the ATP 200, the UTM throughput is rated at 450 megabits per second. That means if you turned everything on, you're expected to get maybe 250 to maybe even 300 megabits per second of real throughput. It is a very high throughput, especially when you have customers now. This is the number one product that you'll go to when you have a customer that says, I just upgraded to a Spectrum 300 meg connection, and my firewall now is the bottleneck, right? It is now too slow to do the full security. And of course, the typical solution is to say, well, let's turn off some of the security to make it faster. Well, in this day and age with the threats that are out there, that's a definite, what we don't advise for you to do. And so the solution is to upgrade them, which we have actually a very aggressive trade-in, trade-up program, to trade them to an ATP series product. Just kind of a general price line, an ATP 200 street price that you would kind of find anywhere out in the market right now in the open market, about $599. So it's very affordable to be able to get this kind of throughput on even that lower end. Whereas before, in order to upgrade to something that can do 300 megs, 250 megs of UTM throughput, you're gonna have to talk about close to $1,000 or even more in order to get that kind of functionality. So we range from 450, 700 to 1200 megabits per second of UTM throughput. So really getting close to that gigabit speeds. We're not quite there yet. The next model will be there, but there's also there's always that that bottleneck of the processors themselves from a cost and things like that to see how far we can push that UTM throughput. And like I mentioned, they all come with a gold security pack. So that includes the sandboxing, the content filtering, botnet filters, application security, being able to block malware like ransomware, being able to use the cloud in order to do the blocking using the cloud threat database, intrusion detection, a geo enforcer where you can block by IP addresses based on countries. You can block with that. You're able to manage up to 130 access points with the ATP product, and it also comes with Secure Reporter, as I mentioned earlier, giving you all the support information. So what's kind of really the difference between the ATP and the USG? Number one, it is some additional functions, all the UTM features. In the ATP, you get additional botnet filters, you get the sandboxing, you get that 0-day blocking capabilities. But I think more importantly, the main difference between the USG and the ATP is that the ATP just is next level performance with all the UTM functions. So your UTM throughput, especially at the price point. So if you need the right price point with a high throughput, ATP is the way to go. Now, USG still has some other features that that the ATP do not have. Things like hotspot management, Facebook Wi-Fi login, those kinds of things for the hospitality. The USG currently is the one, if you need to use those functionalities, is the go-to model to do those kinds of functions. So I had mentioned earlier about Secure Reporter. So what Secure Reporter is, it's a centralized reporting tool that's in the cloud that you can basically send all of your logs. It gives you that visibility of all your customers that you can manage within a single pane of glass. Gives you a picture of what's happening. It gives you alerting, monitoring, gives you analysis, gives you a dashboard on what kind of malware. It allows for you to do comprehensive reports, automated reports as well, which you can then do. You can formulate the PDF that gets created for your customers every month. So that can be sent and emailed out. It really just helps to show value, especially if you're a managed service provider looking to offering these kinds of services to your end customer. It allows for you then to really give back to your customer and show them, hey, this is the value of your monthly fee that you're paying us. Show you what you're blocking, show who's going to what web pages, showing what kind of bandwidth is being used, how much by who, so that they could take action, things like that. So very valuable. And of course, we also had released several months ago our SD-WAN solution through our Nebula orchestrator. So all of the VPN series models that you saw earlier in the previous slide, those all have access to the SD-WAN functionality. So you can actually flip between the standard VPN functions or move it over to the SD-WAN side. So the SD-WAN allows for you to do some zero-touch provisioning. So it's all cloud-based provisioning. Allows for you to have some SD-WAN functionalities like a dynamic path selection, being able to choose packet by packet which connection is the most optimal to send those packets. Now, again, one of the main applications for SD-WAN is voice over IP. So if you have like a dedicated MPLS connection frame relay between two offices, this helps to eliminate the need for that. So you're using your existing internet connections or multiple internet connections and be able to do the dynamic path selection. You also do WAN optimization as well. So you can actually improve traffic between offices as well with multiple internet connections. On top of that, the SD-WAN solution gives you access to the content filtering, the application intelligence, and then also doing what we call dynamic mesh VPN. If any of you guys have set up a VPN before, you know the hassle of not only setting up for a site to site, but what happens when you have a site to multi-site or 4, 5, 6 different sites. Well, dynamic mesh VPN is the solution for that. Basically, in the cloud, you can choose a group, a cluster of VPN devices for that customer and say, hey, these are all part of a VPN that you want to interconnect. And boom, it's going to tell and configure each one of those devices to be able to do and communicate the way that you want it or need it to be. And even build dynamic VPN tunnels. So you don't have to utilize connections or VPN tunnels if it's not being used. So if one office is needing to build a VPN, it will dynamically make the tunnel open up and make that connection to the head-end office and allow for you to have service. So it really helps with the whole configuration and deployment of those solutions. And so the whole SD-WAN solution, the supported hardware is all on our VPN series, the VPN 50, the 100, the VPN 300. And again, those are based on, again, throughput of the models. So I'm going to switch gears, pun intended, and we're going to talk about a little bit about switching. I think this is a very important topic because switching is ultimately the backbone of any network. Of course, Wi-Fi gets all of the fame, gets all the glory because everybody uses a Wi-Fi device. But those access points have to connect to something, right? They have to connect back to a switch network. So definitely skimping out on a switch network is what we don't advise for you to do. But because this is kind of an introduction to who Zyxel is, I wanted to give a quick introduction on our naming convention. So this is how we name all of our switches. ES basically stands for Ethernet switch, and that's any switches that go up to 100 megabits. GS switches, which is what you'll probably see majority of in our portfolio, those stand for gigabit switch. So those go up to 1 gig speed ports. Now we also have XS. So XS is basically X for the Roman numeral 10. So those are ports that support up to 10 gigabits. This includes multi-gig switches as well. So those are the models that are named XS. Now you'll see XGS. Now these are typically 1 gig switch. So it's 10 gig uplinks but are still gigabit switches. So they're traditional gigabit switches primarily and have 10 gig uplink ports. MGS stands for Metro Switch or Metro Gigabit Switch. These are our carrier switches that typically have like AC, DC power, maybe some source of temperature hardening, things like that. Now at the end of the product line, P or HP stand for PoE. So that's just, if it's a single P, then it's just PoE, which we don't typically have anymore. Those are just our historical models. HP is typically what you'll find, and those are our PoE plus switches that support the higher throughput or the higher power bandwidth of 30 watts. And if it has an F in it, that means it's a fiber version or fiber switch. And of course, our switches also come with combo ports. So combo ports are basically a flexible port. They're named and numbered the same port. So you'll have 24. One is a Ethernet and one is a fiber. And you have to choose one or the other. It cannot be both used at the same time. But it gives you the flexibility on whether you're using that uplink port as a fiber or if you're using it as a copper. And of course, SFP ports or SFP plus ports. SFP stands for gigabit, so that can go maximum of 1 gig. SFP plus, they're able to go up to 10 gig. And of course, for any fiber ports, you need to use the appropriate transceivers in order to do that, or the appropriate direct attached cables to that. So in like a switch that does stacking, typically you'll see they have a number. Now the common mistake is people say, I want to stack switches. You can always stack switches in terms of being able to uplink them together through these uplink ports, right? You could still stack them. You can do link aggregation so that you can do a higher bandwidth as you're stacking them physically. But there's some switches that have what we call kind of virtual stacking. So when you use them in this stacking mode, they will function as if they are just one giant, bigger switch in per se from a management standpoint. And so typically they'll have a number, an LED number on the side that kind of designate which switch in the stack it is. So if you're used to stacking switches, this is pretty typical for you. But then you'll use like a direct attach cable, which is Zyxel cells, which basically is a fiber cable, pre-made fiber cable that has transceivers on both ends. So just, you just connect one to the other, comes in 1 meter and 3 meter links, so you can uplink those together. And then of course, power over Ethernet. This is our number one kind of application, being able to power up IP cameras, access points, desktop, voice over IP phones. The nomenclature there is when you see a regular PoE, that's usually 15.4 watts. That's the AF standard. PoE Plus is our 30 watt standard, which is the 802.3 AT. And then there's Ultra PoE, which is now coming out. And some of our products that are on the roadmap will have this. And that's the PoE Plus Plus, which is a 60 watt standard. So our portfolio, again, is also wide range. We have everything from unmanaged to web managed. So these are our web managed series, our low end 5.8 port. We have our smart managed, this is our 1900 series. Our 1920 XS series is our 10 gig versions. We just released our 1920 V2 version series that offer you to have a Nebula Flex. I'll talk about what Nebula Flex is in just a bit. Our 1930 series, which is our web managed smart Nebula Flex with 10 gig uplinks, right? So if you see that naming convention there, XGS. Our NSW series is our cloud. NSW just stands for a Nebula switch. And then we move into our fully managed switches, which is our 2200 series. These basically, the main difference between a web managed and a fully managed switch is that the fully managed switch has access to like CLI, so all your command line functionalities. It has some advanced security features, some advanced functionalities for routing and things like that, multicast, spanning tree protocols, things like that, being able to do all that. So those are the kind of the higher end switches if you're looking at building, a more robust network. But majority of our customers, most of our partners, use our 1900 series switches for probably most of the applications that are out there. Our XGS series, our 2210 is our 10 gig uplink. We have our GS 3700 series, which is our layer 2 plus. So it has some layer 3 functionalities in there, especially if you're looking for VLAN stacking Q and Q, if you're doing some, crazy networks like that. Our XS 3700 series is our hybrid switch that has 10 gig, multi-gig functionalities with our XS 3800 series. Actually, the XS 3700 series has actually been moved end of life. It's been replaced by our 3800 series that has multi-gig functionality. So multi-gig gives you, your typical gigabit, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig ports. And the 4600 series, or actually just 4600, is our layer 3, full layer 3, offers you OSPF, RIP routing, as dynamic and static routing functionalities as well. So that's it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our PoE selection, because this is one of the main applications that Zyxel and Zyxel partners use today. This is pretty much one of our best, these are our best selling switches, is the PoE models, because of the applications that are involved. So we have our unmanaged kind of web managed models. We have models that have, power selections anywhere from the low end all the way to up to 1,000 watts when you dealing with an extra power supply. So a full range of products. And not only is the power budgets high, especially in the market. That's the big thing when you're trying to compare switches in the market today. You may see a price and it's like, oh, the price looks good, from a competitor, but then you look at the power budget and it's because their power budget is half our power budget. And not only do we have typically more power, but we do it in a very smart way. Typical switches will use classification mode, which kind of sets aside the full budget for the device. What Zyxel does is we actually use what we call smart PoE, and it actually detects on what the product or the device powering up actually uses or actually needs, and then allocates that against the budget. So really, the net kind of effect is that Zyxel products in consumption mode can power up more devices than you would typically find in the market today. So we can control all of that power consumption, even down to each port. We can schedule the ports as well. So you can turn on and off access points, or be able to, maybe from a security level, after office hours, you can shut down all of your APs. You can schedule that to happen and then fire them back up just before office hours, things like that. You have the ability to do that, or you can schedule for just maybe a once a month, just do a quick refresh, or once a week kind of thing where you want to just recycle power cycle devices. You can do that as well. And here's how kind of the classification versus consumption mode works. So classification will find an access point, for example, this one, and say, hey, it's classified to use 30 watts. In typical classification mode, in order to power up 20 access points, it would require for you to have a budget of 600 watts to power that. And of course, that's well over majority of the budget that exists today in terms of affordable small business switches. But with consumption mode, Zyxel's consumption mode actually finds out that, hey, this device will use 16 watts. And in order to power up those 20 devices, it only needs 320 watts to do that. So we can actually power up 20 access points and stay under the power consumption of our budget of 375 watts. So that's how that works. So 10 gig, we have a full range of the 10 gig as you saw earlier on the XGS switches. The 1920 series, for version 2, if you're looking for a hybrid switch, this is the product that you want to move towards. We also released an 8-port fanless PoE model as well in this series. So it's kind of a first of its kind in the web managed space. We never had that before. It's also a compact design, so it's not as deep as it was in the previous version. And you can use that hybrid design in both hybrid mode, cloud, or in standalone. So it supports Nebula Flex, so you can switch between that standalone and also free cloud. Then if you want to turn it into full Nebula Cloud, which I'll talk about later, you can do that with these switches and manage them from a single pane of glass. It's easier to manage because it's just a web GUI, or if you're using the cloud, it's going to be very easy just from the single interface there. We provide up to 6 fiber uplinks on the 48 port, 4 fiber uplinks on the 24 port, 2 fiber uplinks on the 8 port, especially with the PoE models. There's some models that are silent or they're fanless design, but majority of them all have smart fan designs. So it's made to operate at a very more quiet kind of speed. So it throttles the fan as it needs. So it's not a full on fan whirling there. We offer full 30 watt PoE on the ports. By default, which is very important, it's defaulted to be consumption mode. So you can, out of the box, basically maximize the power that's being used. So how do you choose? This is where Nebula Flex comes into play. How do you choose whether to use cloud or standalone? Typically, most customers may choose to go cloud, especially now that we offer it for free. So Nebula Flex models offer a free cloud solution. You can use our Nebula Control Center to manage, configure, monitor those devices through that single pane of glass for all of your customers. Or if you're still looking at deploying just a kind of a set it and forget it type network, you can still deploy it into a standard version. So you can switch between, and of course you can switch anytime you want. But of course you have to understand that if you switch it, you'll have to reconfigure it in a sense. You're basically changing its identity and kind of its main functionality. But you could still choose that. So it's really flexible, lets you choose cloud, the free cloud, like I mentioned. There's some feature differences when you're using the free cloud versus the full licensed version. But it allows for you to future-proof your investment. So customers who may not want cloud now, may be kind of upgraded to the free cloud so it gets the visibility, or maybe you get that visibility and see the benefits of using Nebula and using the cloud. And then, of course, then switching over to the full cloud. We have, in this model range, we also have made some changes in the design. It gives you a PoE usage max, kind of an LED in the front panel on to see what the power consumption is currently for being used. It'll tell you as well if it's connected to the cloud using that cloud LED. And of course, there is a restore last custom default button. This is a kind of an awesome function that we've requested for a long time now that is very beneficial to a installer. Say, for example, it's kind of like a Windows, last known, best known configuration. When you install for the first time into a location, you have everything kind of set, all of your security functions, all of your configurations, ports, VLANs. You can save that configuration into what we call, basically a customer default. And if a customer ever happens to, push the restore button, it will revert to that custom default. So it would come back to what we knew or what you installed it as for the very first time. So that really helps. People typically will push the button and then and cause the whole box to do factory reset, right? But instead, it's going to go to that last default. So that'll help either the you to support the end user, or for your technicians to kind of reset it back to what you knew was good. We've also focused a lot on our design of this hardware. All the ports have additional electrostatic protection and surge protection. We've also used, modified a lot of the fan functionalities to be able to do those throttling of the fan, make sure that it's working and operating at the right temperatures, things like that. We also use solid state capacitors and also power noise filters to prevent interference. And we're using also a world-class power supply to make sure that the product is long-lasting. So if you ever have opened up any of the other products, any competitor products, you'll realize that a lot of the hardware is not really made to last. In our 8-port, we've made it very compact and giving you 130 watts in that compact design. It's also fanless, and it's able to operate in very kind of hot environments as well. It also has overheat protection, so the PoE will shut down and log the message in case the system overheats for whatever reason. So you can use this in very small and tight places. Now let's move over to the wireless section. This is where most of the applications exist, right? We have devices that all use wireless, and so we have a full portfolio, a real wide range of products. And so some people will be like, "Hey, why do you have so many access points?" It's because there's so many different kind of applications, scenarios, budgets. We're competing against the low end side, which if you're looking at, a company which we won't name that starts with a U, that has very, low end or a very cost effective access points. We have products that compete with that, not only on price, but we will, beat them on, quality, lifetime warranties on the hardware, all those kinds of things on that side of the space. And of course, on the higher end, we also have smart antenna technologies that deal with a lot of co-channel interference. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that as well. But again, a full range of products, whether it's in the hospitality, whether it's just a standalone smoke detector type, product with and without cloud, or Flex, Nebula Flex versions as well. We have a product that will fit in that. So we have a Nebula central management. We have the Nebula full management. We have a standalone management and also control management in all of these access points. So all the different access points have these options. So again, flexible based on what applications you are doing. And of course, we've designed the wireless really to help with the experience of not only the user, but also, as an installer. For quality, robust hardware, you can see there we have the antennas are backed on top of a metal shielding to prevent interference to the PCB board. All of the processors and the radios are also shielded as well so that they don't interfere with each other. The back plate is also shielding as well to help kind of shield the AP from interference from other access points. Because of course, you're not installing just one access point in most cases. A lot of the applications, you're deploying multiple access points. So you have to deal with all of that interference. And of course, all of this is backed by our lifetime warranty on our hardware. So what is Nebula Flex? Like I mentioned earlier before, you can move it between a standalone mode and a full Nebula mode. And these are the access points that are Nebula Flexed. So these are all your standalone. Again, they can be standalone or a Nebula. And I wanted to talk about one of our key differentiators in our flagship models, and that's our award-winning smart antenna technology. So what's the issue typically with wireless? You want to get faster speeds, better performance, but of course you need to use more channels, which is hard to do, especially in a crowded space. So that causes what we call co-channel interference. So that is really what is the main cause of why you have bad or poor Wi-Fi. Co-channel interference is kind of like a multi-lane highway, and they're all just colliding. Everybody's trying to send traffic, right? Everybody's trying to talk all at the same time, and so it just kind of collides with each other. And so your traditional methods of dealing with co-channel interference on radios is to turn the power down. So you actually will turn down, your coverage area, and by turning down your coverage area, you're mitigating kind of the co-channel interference, but then you're losing coverage. So that really doesn't help, so much when you're dealing with Wi-Fi. You don't want to have those dead spots. So here's what you deal with is that you want to use smart antenna technology to not only increase the capabilities, the capacity of the network, but to reduce interference, which then ultimately gives you increased coverage, and do this in a very economical kind of power smart way. So what is smart antenna? So your conventional omnidirectional antenna is kind of a globe or an orb type shape that is kind of blasting the signal kind of everywhere. And then you have your directional antennas that are more focused beamed, right? So they just kind of point in a general area. So that's a 90-degree kind of directional antenna. And what smart antenna does is that it actually uses and scans for the clients and for interference, and then uses an algorithm of over 700 patterns and looks for kind of the optimal beam to communicate with that client. Now, you may think this is beam forming, but it's not beam forming, because beam forming typically requires for you to have both the client side and the access point side to have that technology in order to get the benefit. But here with smart antenna technology, we're doing all the work. We are actually doing the listening. We're actually doing the speaking towards and focus towards the client. So we find that optimal beam and be able to ignore the client. So my analogy typically is, imagine I'm an access point and you are a client, and we're standing in a field and we're trying to communicate. So with smart antenna, not only am I cupping my hands and talking to you, which actually makes my voice louder to you, but I'm also cupping my ears at the same time, listening in your general direction. So I get to listen to you much better as well, and ignoring any or canceling out interference behind me. That's really kind of the application. Of course, smart antenna will also work as you move around. So as the client is roaming, it is then constantly looking for the right pattern to make sure that it's optimally kind of available, doing it in an optimal way. If you want to find out a little bit more, the University of Bruxia did a kind of independent third-party kind of study on what's the importance, or why is smart antenna technology important. And of course, they brought in Zyxel, Aruba, Ruckus, and Cisco. Only Ruckus was the other one that has smart antenna technology. But surprisingly, what they found, and surprisingly to us as well, is that Zyxel actually outperformed the competitors up to 70%, especially in eliminating that co-channel interference. So overall throughput, overall coverage was better. And so these are our product lines that use smart antenna technology. Typically, they are our 5000 series or 6000 series access points. So these are the models that are there. Of course, operating up to 256 devices concurrently. So these are kind of, again, high capacity for applications like smart classrooms where you have 50 devices in an area, or a convention center where you have to have a lot of coverage, a lot of capacity in a small packed area. So Nebula is kind of the last topic that we want to tie together our solutions. We feel cloud and Nebula is the wave of the future, and it's been out for about 2.5 years now. and it's been continually growing and been being deployed and accepted by our partners and by managed service providers around the world, because everyone's looking for an easy way to install and configure, monitor without having to use any kind of other software, any third-party software, but be able to do that all in one. So installing a Nebula product is actually really easy. We call it 1, 2, 3, but actually it could be 2, 3, 1 for all that matters. Basically, as long as you plugged in the Nebula device at some point, you've logged in and registered the device at some point, and you've configured the device at some point, they all will be provisioned and working together. So you could set up literally without unboxing. So you can pick up a box, you can register your device using the serial number MAC address. You can scan with the QR code either on the product belly label or on the box sticker itself. So the UPC code will have a actually QR code that you can scan it in with the Nebula app, and that can then be chosen to be part of customer number 1, and any configurations that you've already pre-configured for customer number 1 now goes and updates that once the box comes online. So really that's the first step. Bam, you add those devices to that network, you plug it in, it can be up in minutes, because once that's in and it has internet connectivity, the device will call home automatically, punches through the firewall from the inside out, communicates with the Nebula control center and says, hey, who do I belong to and what is my identity? And then gets all those configurations pushed down to it, gets the latest firmwares, gets the configuration that it was intended to be. And it usually just takes a couple minutes. And then there's no additional software that you have to install. You just have to log on to the webpage, basically. It's nebula.zyxel.com, and manage all of your customers, the different organizations, through a browser. So you can literally do this anywhere, right? You could be sitting in Jamaica, drinking a nice coconut drink, checking on the network through your iPad. It's really that simple to manage and be able to give you that kind of visibility to see what's going on a customer network, on your network. It's beneficial for both the managed service provider and also to the end user customer as well. And of course, like I said, you have access anywhere. So wherever you want, wherever you have internet connectivity, you have access to see what's going on your network. And of course, on mobile as well, you can use the app. It gives you access and views. We've enhanced it quite a bit. So if you haven't used the app lately, I advise for you to update that or download it and check it out. It's really a great, and continue to add more functionality. So again, working with Zyxel, you're able to give us feedback on what you would like to see, what is useful in the app, in the Nebula application itself, what to add, and we can add those kind of functionalities to it. Again, because we are the R&D that puts it all together. You can manage all of your customer clients, sites, all in one place. Gives you that single pane of glass to manage multi-tenants. So you can do it as organizations that have sites, and each sites have different devices and stuff in there. So you can manage different customers, different organizations that way. So it has a multi-tier, especially made for an MSP. So here, for example, you have an organization 1. So if you have one of your customers that have multi-site, you can put it all under a single organization and manage those devices through that, and also manage all of the licensing services. You have your multi-tier. You can even map them. So your organization can have that overview of all the different sites and put it onto a map so you can see a location. And then when you drill into a particular organization, you have a view, kind of an overall view of what's going on. So you can see what's going on all your access points, switches, gateways. And also what I find useful is that traffic summary. So it could tell you what applications are most used in that network, and then you can drill in and find some more information, more data from that. And of course, it has built-in captive portal as well. So if you're running a hotspot or wanting to put a hotspot extension within that customer's network on a specific SSID, you can do that as well and do a kind of a captive portal scenario. And also, I think now we actually have integrated also Facebook Wi-Fi too, as well. So all in that, I know it was kind of a giant, kind of an effect if we just sent you everything. And this actually doesn't cover everything that Zyxel does. So you may have found some things that you didn't realize that Zyxel does. A lot of times when I talk to partners and customers in person, and talk about our solutions, they come up and they say, "Wow, we didn't realize that you guys did, layer 3 switches, or didn't realize that you had this kind of full array of product lines for wireless or security." So this is kind of just to help you to kind of get that flavor of that Zyxel pretty much has anything that's connected to a network. We have a solution that probably fits into that scenario, in that need, especially in the small business space. That's where we primarily focus. And so if you haven't already joined our partner program is very aggressive in terms of what we want to provide for a managed service provider. We work through distributors like D&H, Ingram, Synix, Wave. And if you have any kind of demands, or especially products availability in any of these distributors, reach out to your sales rep. As a partner, you have access to a sales rep that's right here out of Anaheim, that can help you with any kind of your stock needs, direct ship, drop ship kind of functionalities. But mostly you want to join the program because of the discounts. How we kind of structure the discounts is that in a silver tier, which typically if you're a new partner, you'll hit the silver tier. You start out on the silver tier level. In order to maintain that silver tier kind of status, you have to have qualifying sales of about $6,000 per 6 months. So it's only about $1,000. That's like 2 firewalls, maybe 1 or 2 firewalls a month, right? That's kind of the low kind of entry barrier. But that gives you 16% off of distribution, and access to a full array of things, including NFR units, discounts, and things like that. But ultimately, where you want to go is to get to the gold, because that gives you 20% off your distribution price, and that gives you that margin where even if, how we factor it out is, even if you were trying to compete against the Amazon price, what you see on Amazon, you'll still be making at least 16 or more percent off of that when you sell to your customers at that price. And so we're giving you the margin there because we want you to add the value. We want to be able to support you, especially when you're competing against other vendors who are primarily focused to be online. You're not making anything. You're basically just having the customer buy the hardware, right? But here you can buy the hardware and offer to your customer at the same price that you see online, and be able to make margin off of that. And that's pretty unheard of, right? A lot of the margins that you're probably dealing with is maybe single digit, but here we're offering double digit margin, 16 to 20% off, in terms of that. But especially when you get to the gold, you get access to our sales engineer, advanced replacements, lead referrals, things like that, that give you further benefit. And of course, you can still do all of your bid registrations or your deal registrations, and that gives you the maximum kind of discounts against, if you have a project that you're working on. So reach out if you're not sure where to go. Go to vars.zyxel.com. That'll take you to our partner site for more information on that. Again, reach out to your sales rep. If you don't know, let me know. My email again is tri@zyxel.com. And that really is it. Concludes the thank you for your time. If there's any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section or the chat box, but primarily the Q&A section if you have any questions on any of the topics that I've talked about. If you think about any other questions that you want to ask me, again, tri@zyxel.com. Send me an email and I will forward it on, or to answer your questions. But if you don't have any questions and you don't want to sit around and see if there's any other questions, again, I thank you for being a valuable Zyxel partner. We look forward to being your networking ally, and we hope to be able to work with you on any of your projects. Feel free to reach out to us, and we can work with you on finding the best solution for your customer for those projects. So if there are no questions, currently there are no questions. And RW, I see your question there. Yeah, you might want to reach out there to our support team about your issue with clients using Mac Mail. Or you can just send me an email as well there, RW Sanders, about that, and I can forward it on to our engineer. Take a look at. Brett, if you do have a question, feel free to ask that into the Q&A section. Or you can send me an email. So Since there is probably no other questions, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me this morning, now afternoon. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We look forward to working with you soon.